Howdy folks, good afternoon, how are we all doing? Here's the second video for today, still over at the Gasparilla Island State Park, but this video I want to focus a bit more on the cultural history that is found here. So, where I just came from, I was inside the Boca Grande Lighthouse. And you may be thinking, is it a currently active lighthouse? No, it's not. But it used to be. So you figure back in the late 1800s, going throughout the 1900s, it was an active lighthouse through the U.S. Coast Guard. And is still protected by them too, as a matter of fact. So it was first built, I believe, back in 1890, and the first occupant was one Mr. McNulty. I think his first name was Scott. I'll have to double check on that. But yes, he was the lighthouse keeper at the time. And as a matter of fact, he actually lived there. It was basically a house and also a lighthouse. So he lived there. And then to the right is basically the assistant lighthouse keeper. And they had their own separate place too. And that now serves as basically a ranger station. And this is now a museum that basically focuses on Boca Grande's history. So, back when it was in the 1950s and 60s, this place was under severe erosion. And the building was at one point at risk of actually being succumbed to the sea because of the erosion. So eventually, it was like the Nixon administration had to step in and basically re-nourish the sand that was found here and essentially help protect this coastline. And that's why those rocks that you see in the distance were installed. Now, aside from that, slight change of subject. Some of you may be wondering, why is this place called Boca Grande? Well, to shed some light, Boca Grande actually comes from the Spanish language, which actually means a large mouth. And going back in time, in the 1500s, the Spaniards were very well-known explorers in this area. And for a time, they actually owned this land until it reached into the 1800s when the Spanish ceded the land over to Britain. And then eventually it became, or no, it wasn't like the 1800s, I think it was like in the 1600s. But eventually that land would eventually be claimed by the United States in the 1800s. There we go. I had to think about that for a second, correct myself. Now, when the Spaniards were through here, they saw this inlet, and it reminded them of seeing, a big mouth of water. And thus the name basically stuck. And as a matter of fact, too, since we're getting into the Charlotte Harbor here, this was like one of the first areas of Florida that a famous explorer, Juan Ponce de Leon, explored at the time. He actually had a settled village in the area. Now, Juan Ponce de Leon was basically under the Spanish Empire. He was basically being paid to explore parts of the New World. See what there was and see if it was possible for the Spanish to expand and have more land. Ooh, bit of a rhyme there. So, Ponce de Leon highly interacted with the Calusa culture. They were the predominant Indian tribe that lived in this area, and you got to figure the Calusa, they had their own way of life. And even at one point, there were religious individuals who tried to influence Christianity to them, and it didn't work. So you could say in this area there was war between the Spaniards and the Calusa. Eventually, the Calusa lost, and many of them winded up having to go onto the Trail of Tears and get moved into Arkansas and even Oklahoma, into reservations. But a neat fact about this island, too, is back in the early 1900s, one of the biggest industries that was here was the phosphate industry. The phosphate is an organic compound that normally bonds with oxygen, nitrogen, and even hydrogen. So basically your organic elements that help sustain life. Now, it was discovered that phosphate could highly be used as a means of replenishing nutrients, whether it be on land or even on water. And thus, a lot of phosphate was actually extracted from this island. And eventually, there was a railroad through Agrico, that was the name of the company at the time. There was a railroad that started from all the way here, where I'm standing, and went all the way up to Arcadia to help supply the state with phosphate. And basically phosphate right now is still a huge deal, especially when it comes to fertilizer use. Not only that, another large industry that was down here that brought tourism was tarpons. Oftentimes, tarpons breed during sort of like the spring months. So you figure basically from April to early July. And oftentimes, these tarpon can grow as long as 5 to 6 feet. So basically just as tall as I am. And that, oftentimes the larger ones were the females. And they could weigh, like as a minimum, 100 pounds. But usually they would weigh even more than that. So, and often times when it came to their color, they were usually a bit, kind of like silverish gray. And with this section here of land and the inlet, this was a very popular destination for tarpon fishing. And it brought people down from all over just to witness the catching of them. So, I mean, there's just a lot of history here, whether it be industrial or cultural. There's a lot here, and Boca Grande is well worth your time for a visit. And as a matter of fact, since Boca Grande lies on Gasparilla Island, apparently the legend goes that Gasparilla Island gets its name from an individual named Jose Gaspar, who was apparently a pirate. Now, some people say that the name was just made up, just to create a story. But then some believe that he was real. And apparently this Jose Gaspar used to live in this area. And thus, eventually, the islands became Gasparilla Island. So you could say that the name stuck. But yeah. So, hope you guys enjoyed this little historical lesson. I know I threw a lot at you guys at once. But, as I said, this museum is really well worth your time and visit. They're open during only the weekdays, not the weekend, from 11 to 3 o'clock. So just keep that in mind if you want to plan a visit to come down here and check it out. So alright you guys, hope you all enjoy your Wednesday, and Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care folks. See ya.